The prophecy of the Chosen One remains one of the most pivotal and controversial aspects of Star Wars lore, embodying the perpetual interplay of destiny, choice, and the mysterious workings of the Force. Interpreted as a promise to bring balance to the Force, this prophecy guided the actions and beliefs of the Jedi Order for generations, yet its fulfillment became the foundation of their greatest undoing. The question lingers: was this prophecy a misreading by the Jedi, a deliberate manipulation by the Sith, or an inevitable consequence of the Force's grand design? To understand the significance of this prophecy and its ultimate impact, one must first examine its core assertion: the Chosen One was destined to bring balance to the Force. The Jedi, steeped in centuries of tradition and self-assured righteousness, interpreted this as the eradication of the Sith and the triumph of the light side. Yet this interpretation was flawed, rooted in their complacency and narrow perspective. The Jedi believed themselves the embodiment of balance, yet their very structure reflected a detachment from the organic flow of the Force. Their code emphasized suppression of emotions and eschewed attachments, which in turn alienated them from the galaxy's broader populace. This detachment blinded them to the emergence of Darth Sidious and the Sith's covert resurgence. The Sith, unlike the Jedi, operated within the shadows, patiently awaiting the moment to exploit the weaknesses of their adversaries. Sidious, a master of manipulation and deceit, recognized the Jedi's dogmatic interpretation of the prophecy as a vulnerability. Anakin Skywalker, a being born of the Force and prophesied to fulfill its mandate, became the perfect pawn in Sidious's grand plan. The Jedi, seeing Anakin as the key to their ultimate victory, placed upon him the crushing weight of their expectations without considering the toll it would take. They failed to guide him with compassion, instead fostering his insecurities and fears, which Sidious deftly exploited. Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader was a moment of profound tragedy and a testament to the Jedi Order's failure to adapt. The Chosen One's fall into darkness seemed to signify a subversion of the prophecy, a Sith triumph that shattered the Jedi's hubris. Yet this interpretation, too, oversimplifies the complexity of the Force and its will. The rise of the Sith under Sidious was not merely a triumph of darkness, but a necessary correction to the Jedi's stagnation. For decades, the Jedi had operated as an unchallenged institution, their dominance tipping the scales of the Force toward the light. The Sith's ascendancy, horrifying as it was, rebalanced these scales in a way the Jedi were unwilling or unable to foresee. The notion of balance itself warrants scrutiny. The Jedi equated balance with the eradication of darkness, failing to grasp that balance necessitates the coexistence of opposing forces. Light and dark are not enemies but complementary aspects of the Force, their interplay essential to its vitality. This duality is echoed in the mythological and philosophical traditions of countless cultures, where creation and destruction, life and death, exist in harmony. By attempting to suppress the dark side, the Jedi inadvertently invited its resurgence, giving rise to the very threat they sought to eliminate. The prophecy, viewed through this lens, was not a promise of victory for one side, but a mandate to restore equilibrium. Darth Sidious understood this better than most, though his ambition was not to serve the will of the Force, but to bend it to his own desires. His manipulation of Anakin and orchestration of the Clone Wars represented a masterstroke of strategic brilliance. He positioned himself as both the savior and destroyer, exploiting the galaxy's desperation to consolidate power. The Jedi, meanwhile, became pawns in his game, their noble ideals reduced to tools of war. Their descent into militarism further alienated them from the Force, leaving them vulnerable to Sidious's final coup. Despite the darkness of these events, the prophecy's fulfillment was not undone. Anakin's fall was not the end of his journey, but a necessary step toward his ultimate redemption. His descent into darkness, while catastrophic, was also transformative, allowing him to embody the duality of the Force in a way the Jedi never could. As Darth Vader, Anakin became the vessel through which the Sith achieved their long-sought dominance, yet this dominance sowed the seeds of its own undoing. The tyranny of the Empire, while devastating, galvanized resistance and gave rise to a new generation of heroes who would restore hope to the galaxy. The culmination of Anakin's journey and the redemption arc of Darth Vader illuminates the true meaning of the prophecy. In the climactic confrontation aboard the second Death Star, Vader's choice to save his son, Luke, marked the fulfillment of his destiny. By destroying Sidious and sacrificing himself, Anakin brought an end to the Sith's reign and restored balance to the Force. This act of selflessness transcended the binary opposition of light and dark, embodying the Force's deeper unity. It demonstrated that balance is not achieved through domination or suppression, but through reconciliation and harmony. However, even this interpretation is not without complications. The events of the sequel trilogy suggest that balance, once achieved, is not permanent but an ongoing process. The rise of the First Order and the return of Palpatine reveal that the forces of darkness cannot be eradicated, only contained. The Jedi's failure to learn from their past mistakes, clinging to outdated doctrines and repeating the cycle of conflict further underscores the prophecy's complexity. It is not a simple tale of triumph or tragedy, but a reflection of the Force's eternal dynamism. The will of the Force, enigmatic and inscrutable, cannot be reduced to the agendas of its adherents, whether Jedi or Sith. Both orders, in their arrogance, sought to impose their own interpretations upon the Force, failing to recognize that it operates beyond their comprehension. The prophecy of the Chosen One, rather than a clear directive, serves as a mirror, reflecting the limitations and aspirations of those who seek to understand it. It challenges the Jedi and Sith alike to confront their biases and embrace the Force's inherent complexity. At its core, the prophecy is a story of transformation and renewal. It illustrates the cyclical nature of history, where destruction paves the way for creation and endings give rise to new beginnings. The Jedi, in their fall, were forced to reckon with their hubris and rediscover their connection to the living Force. The Sith, in their triumph, revealed the consequences of unchecked ambition and the dangers of seeking power for its own sake. Anakin Skywalker, as the Chosen One, embodied these dualities, his journey a microcosm of the galaxy's struggles and the Force's eternal balance. The debate over the prophecy's meaning and fulfillment will likely continue to captivate scholars and fans alike, its nuances inviting endless exploration. Was it a misreading, a Sith triumph, or merely the will of the Force? Perhaps it was all three, woven together in a tapestry of destiny and choice. In the end, the prophecy is less about providing answers and more about prompting questions that challenge us to reflect on our understanding of balance, power, and the interplay of light and dark. Through this lens, the Star Wars saga transcends its status as a space opera, offering a meditation on the mysteries of existence and the forces that shape our lives. The notion that the prophecy could be misread or misinterpreted speaks to a broader theme in Star Wars: the fallibility of belief systems, even those guided by the Force. The Jedi Order, for all its wisdom, was not immune to hubris or error. Their interpretation of the prophecy was colored by their worldview, one that prioritized their vision of order and their conviction that the Sith were an aberration to be eliminated. Yet their failure to define what balance truly meant left them vulnerable to manipulation and ultimately destruction. The Jedi assumed that they were the natural custodians of balance, an assumption that blinded them to their own excesses and the creeping resurgence of darkness. This misreading created a self-fulfilling prophecy. By pinning their hopes on Anakin as the Chosen One who would destroy the Sith, they placed him on an untenable pedestal. Anakin was exalted as their savior, yet he was also distrusted and feared due to his unusual origins and raw power. The Council's reluctance to grant him the rank of Master, despite his extraordinary talents and contributions, was emblematic of their inability to reconcile their expectations of him with their unease about his nature. This contradiction sowed seeds of resentment and insecurity in Anakin, which Palpatine expertly cultivated. The Jedi's treatment of Anakin revealed their inability to adapt to the realities of the galaxy, a rigidity that stood in stark contrast to the Sith's opportunistic flexibility. Palpatine's role in this narrative cannot be overstated. A master tactician and manipulator, he understood the flaws in the Jedi's interpretation of the prophecy and used them to his advantage. He fostered Anakin's doubts about the Jedi Order, presenting himself as a mentor who valued Anakin's strength and understood his struggles. More importantly, Palpatine preyed on Anakin's fears of loss, particularly his desperation to protect Padme. By framing the Sith's teachings as a path to save those he loved, Palpatine turned Anakin's noble intentions against him, twisting his destiny into a tool of the dark side. Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader was not merely a personal tragedy, but a turning point in the galaxy's history. The fall of the Jedi Order and the rise of the Empire were consequences of the Jedi's miscalculation and the Sith's strategic cunning. To some, this outcome might seem like a triumph for the Sith, a vindication of their belief in the inevitability of conflict and domination. Yet even in their moment of victory, the seeds of their downfall were planted. The Sith's philosophy, driven by greed and ambition, is inherently self-destructive. By concentrating power in the hands of one individual Sidious, they created a fragile system that would collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. The idea that this sequence of events was simply the will of the Force is both compelling and unsettling. The Force, in its infinite complexity, operates beyond the dichotomy of good and evil. It is neither benevolent nor malevolent, but an enduring energy field that encompasses all life. The prophecy, as an expression of the Force's will, may have been less about choosing sides and more about resetting a balance that had been disrupted. In this view, Anakin's fall and redemption were not accidents or deviations, but necessary steps in a cosmic process. Anakin's eventual redemption, catalyzed by his son Luke, underscores the cyclical nature of the prophecy. In Luke, we see the qualities that the Jedi lacked in their dealings with Anakin: patience, compassion, and an unwavering belief in redemption. Luke's refusal to kill his father, even in the face of the Emperor's taunts, represents a rejection of the binary thinking that defined the Jedi and Sith alike. This act of defiance, rooted in love and faith, rekindled the light within Anakin and enabled him to fulfill the prophecy by destroying Sidious. In this moment, Anakin became more than a pawn in the game of the Jedi and Sith. He transcended their paradigms, embodying the true essence of balance. His actions were not dictated by the Jedi's rigid code or the Sith's pursuit of power, but by a profound connection to the Force's unity. By sacrificing himself to save Luke and destroy the Emperor, Anakin reconciled the light and dark within himself, achieving the equilibrium that the prophecy foretold. However, the aftermath of this fulfillment raises further questions about the prophecy's implications and the nature of balance. The destruction of the Sith and the redemption of Anakin seemed to restore harmony, yet this balance proved ephemeral. The events of the sequel trilogy reveal that darkness persists, manifesting in new forms and challenging the galaxy once more. The rise of the First Order, the resurgence of Palpatine, and the emergence of Kylo Ren suggest that balance is not a static state but a dynamic process, one that requires constant vigilance and renewal. The Force, as an ever-present and evolving energy, resists attempts to define or control it. The Jedi and Sith, in their arrogance, sought to impose their will upon the Force, interpreting its mysteries through the lens of their respective ideologies. Yet the prophecy of the Chosen One serves as a reminder that the Force operates on a scale beyond their comprehension. Its will is not bound by the ambitions of individuals or the doctrines of orders. Instead, it reflects the complexity of life itself, with its cycles of creation, destruction, and renewal. This perspective invites a reevaluation of the prophecy and its significance. Was it truly misread, or was its ambiguity intentional? Perhaps the prophecy was never meant to provide clear answers, but to challenge those who encountered it to grapple with the Force's inherent complexity. In this sense, the prophecy becomes less about predicting the future and more about illuminating the present, forcing the Jedi and Sith to confront their limitations and evolve. The story of the Chosen One, then, is not merely a tale of destiny or a cautionary parable about misinterpretation. It is a meditation on the nature of power, balance, and the interplay of choice and inevitability. It reflects the central themes of Star Wars, exploring the tension between light and dark, the consequences of hubris, and the redemptive power of love and compassion. Through the lens of the prophecy, we see the struggles of the Jedi and Sith not as isolated conflicts, but as manifestations of the Force's eternal dance. In the end, the prophecy of the Chosen One remains open to interpretation, its meaning shaped by the perspectives and biases of those who seek to understand it. Whether it was a misreading, a Sith triumph, or simply the will of the Force, it continues to resonate as a symbol of the galaxy's struggles and the enduring mystery of the Force. Its legacy is not defined by answers but by the questions it inspires, prompting us to reflect on our own understanding of balance, destiny, and the forces that shape our lives. The prophecy's enduring appeal lies in its ambiguity, and its ultimate resolution opens as many doors as it closes. While the Jedi perceived it as a means to end the Sith and restore peace, and the Sith saw it as an opportunity to twist fate toward their domination, the reality was far more nuanced. The Force, indifferent to the ambitions of either side, acted through the prophecy to guide events toward a rebalancing. Yet this balance was not static or final, it was part of an ongoing cycle, reflective of the Force's dynamic and ever-changing nature. To delve further into the prophecy, we must consider the role of those who interpreted it. The Jedi Order, in its declining years, had become a rigid and insular institution. While they served as peacekeepers for the Republic, their connection to the living Force had weakened, supplanted by adherence to dogma and political entanglements. Their interpretation of the prophecy reflected this narrowness. By equating balance with the eradication of the dark side, they failed to grasp that their own dominance had contributed to the imbalance. This misstep was not merely philosophical but practical. The Jedi's inability to foresee or address the growing threat of the Sith stemmed from their hubris and detachment. Even as Palpatine consolidated power under their noses, they remained focused on external threats, unable to detect the darkness within the Republic itself. The Clone Wars further eroded their moral standing, forcing the Jedi into roles as generals and soldiers, positions antithetical to their principles. This militarization of the Jedi eroded their spiritual foundation, leaving them vulnerable to the manipulations of the Sith and the internal collapse of their order. Anakin Skywalker's journey, as both the Chosen One and the tragic figure at the center of the prophecy, underscores the consequences of the Jedi's failures. From the beginning, Anakin was a paradox created by the Force, yet vulnerable to the flaws of those who sought to guide him. The Jedi placed enormous expectations on him while denying him the support and understanding he desperately needed. Their rigid approach to detachment and discipline clashed with Anakin's deeply emotional nature, creating a rift that Palpatine exploited with devastating precision. Palpatine's role in Anakin's fall was emblematic of the Sith's cunning and adaptability. Where the Jedi saw the prophecy as a tool to eliminate the dark side, Palpatine saw it as an opportunity to co-opt destiny itself. By positioning himself as a mentor and confidant, he gained Anakin's trust, feeding his insecurities while offering him forbidden knowledge and power. Palpatine's ultimate triumph was not merely in turning Anakin to the dark side, but in framing this turn as a fulfillment of Anakin's destiny. In this sense, the prophecy was not misread but weaponized, its ambiguity manipulated to serve the Sith's agenda. Yet even in their apparent victory, the Sith overreached. The Empire's reign, built on fear and oppression, was inherently unstable. Sidious's reliance on Anakin, as his enforcer and the architect of his power, created a vulnerability that would ultimately undo him. The bond between Vader and Luke Skywalker, forged through the trials of rebellion and redemption, proved stronger than the chains of the dark side. In the end, it was Anakin's humanity, his capacity for love and self-sacrifice, that fulfilled the prophecy, not his power or allegiance to the Sith. Luke's role in this resolution cannot be overstated. As the last of the Jedi, Luke represented a new approach to the Force, one that blended the wisdom of the old order with a deeper understanding of compassion and connection. Unlike the Jedi who came before him, Luke did not view the dark side as something to be destroyed at all costs. Instead, he saw the potential for redemption, even in the darkest of places. This perspective, born of his experiences and trials, enabled him to reach Anakin in a way that the Jedi never could. The climactic moment aboard the second Death Star, when Anakin chose to save Luke and destroy Sidious, marked the prophecy's apparent fulfillment. The Sith were vanquished, and balance was restored to the Force. Yet this balance, as subsequent events would reveal, was not permanent. The rise of the First Order and the return of Palpatine in the sequel trilogy suggest that the prophecy was not a definitive endpoint, but a turning point in a much larger cycle. This realization forces us to reconsider the nature of the prophecy and its implications for the galaxy. The sequel trilogy adds layers of complexity to the prophecy's legacy. Rey's discovery of her connection to Palpatine and her eventual rise as a new beacon of hope echoes the themes of destiny and choice that defined Anakin's journey. Similarly, Kylo Ren's internal struggle between light and dark reflects the ongoing tension between these opposing forces. Their stories highlight the enduring relevance of the prophecy, even as they complicate its resolution. Rey's ultimate decision to embrace her identity as a Skywalker, rather than her bloodline as a Palpatine, underscores the central theme of choice in the Star Wars saga. While the prophecy speaks of destiny, it is the choices of individuals Anakin, Luke, Rey, and even Kylo that shape the galaxy's fate. The Force may guide events, but it does not dictate outcomes. Its will is enacted through the actions and decisions of those who wield it. Kylo Ren's redemption, much like Anakin's, further illustrates the cyclical nature of the prophecy's themes. His sacrifice to save Rey mirrors Anakin's sacrifice to save Luke, suggesting that the struggle between light and dark is not a battle to be won but a balance to be maintained. This perspective reframes the prophecy not as a singular event but as a recurring process, one that reflects the ongoing evolution of the galaxy and the Force itself. In the end, the prophecy of the Chosen One remains an enigma, not because it is unknowable, but because it resists definitive interpretation. Its meaning shifts depending on perspective, embodying the complexity and ambiguity of the Force. Was it a misreading, a Sith triumph, or the will of the Force? Perhaps it was all of these and more, a reflection of the galaxy's struggles and the eternal dance of light and dark. What the prophecy ultimately teaches is that balance is not a static state but an ongoing journey. The Jedi and Sith, in their pursuit of dominance, failed to understand this fundamental truth. Anakin's journey, from hero to villain to savior, encapsulates this lesson, showing that balance is achieved not through the eradication of one side, but through the reconciliation of opposites. The prophecy, in all its mystery, serves as a reminder that the Force is not bound by the ambitions or interpretations of its adherents. It is a living, evolving energy, one that reflects the galaxy's perpetual cycle of conflict, redemption, and renewal. The legacy of the prophecy, like the Force itself, is timeless. It continues to inspire debate and reflection, challenging us to consider the nature of balance, power, and destiny. In this way, it transcends the boundaries of fiction, offering insights into the complexities of existence and the choices that define us. The prophecy may never be fully understood, but its impact resonates across the Star Wars saga, a testament to the enduring power of its themes and the mystery of the Force.